Bromine has 35 protons and 35 electrons and quite easily gains an electron. Today we're delving into Unit 2.6 of the first half of General Chemistry, which covers ions. Ions are atoms or molecules with an unequal number of protons and electrons, creating an overall electrical charge, either positive or negative. Chemical reactions generally do not change the nucleus of an atom where the protons and neutrons are. However, atoms can gain or lose electrons quite easily, forming these ions. Positively charged ions are called cations, while negatively charged ions are called anions. The properties of ions play a critical role in many chemical reactions and biological processes. To see how cations, positively charged ions, form, we can look at the potassium K atom. Potassium has 19 protons and 19 electrons and quite easily loses an electron. We'll go over why in the upcoming units to have only 18 electrons. Since there is a net additional 1 proton, the ion has a +1 charge denoted in the superscript. The plus means +1, and with each increasing net proton, the positive charge increases to 2+, 3+, and so on. The opposite is true in gaining of an electron, which we can see in bromine. Bromine has 35 protons and 35 electrons and quite easily gains an electron. Again, we'll go over why in the upcoming units to have 36 electrons forming an anion. Since there is a net additional 1 electron, the ion has a -1 charge denoted in the superscript. The minus means -1, and with each increasing net electron, the negative charge increases to 2-, 3-, and so on. It's important to notice that the size of the electron shell of an atom changes with the addition or subtraction of an electron. Ions can also form between multiple atoms, which we call polyatomic ions. Some examples of this are ammonium, NH4, with a 1+ charge made up of 1 nitrogen atom and 4 hydrogen atoms, and phosphate, PO4, with a 3- charge made up of 1 phosphorus atom and 4 oxygen atoms. Fortunately for chemists, we can look to the periodic table to predict the ionic charge of many atoms. The elements in group 8A are called noble gases and are called this because they tend not to react with other elements due to their stability, which comes from the number of electrons they have in their outer shell. Elements close to this column will either gain or lose electrons proportionally to have the same number as these noble gases. For example, let's look at our previous examples of potassium and bromine in the periodic table. We can see that both are 1 electron away from the column. Potassium loses 1 electron to have the same number of electrons as argon, Ar, and bromine gains 1 electron to have the same number of electrons as krypton, Kr, which was exactly what we saw in our examples. Keep in mind, elements can gain or lose more than 1 electron to form ions. For example, magnesium, Mg, will lose 2 electrons to have the same number as neon, and oxygen, O, will gain 2 electrons to have the same number of electrons as neon, Ne. This leads us to ionic compounds. As the name suggests, ionic compounds are chemical compounds composed of ions. One of the most common ionic compound is one that you ingest on a daily basis, sodium chloride. Sodium chloride, NaCl, more commonly referred to as salt, is composed of the Na+ ion and the Cl- ion. Due to the equal but opposite sign charge of these ions, they form a stable bond called an ionic bond with a net 0 charge. This stability is portrayed in its melting point temperature, which is 801 degrees Celsius. Ionic compounds can also form between more than just 2 atoms as long as the net charge equals 0. For example, magnesium Mg will lose 2 electrons having a 2+ charge, which can form ionic bonds with 2 chlorine ions, 1- each, to form MgCl2. Based on what you learned, think about the following questions. How many electrons will lithium gain or lose to form its ion? Write the molecular formula of the ionic compound sodium and oxygen will form. How many electrons will barium gain or lose to form its ion? Thank you so much for spending your valuable time learning and bettering yourself. If you like the video and want to learn more, donate, or get tutoring, please check out my website, nocollegeneeded.org. You can use the code NCN for 20% off tutoring and any supplemental material.